So, hi everyone. This is our third episode. Here we're going to be talking with James Clark, founder at K3C, who I've known for a long time now, does a lot of great work in his new business, K3C. James, do you want to give a bit of an introduction on you and what you're doing with K3C, how you're helping startups?
Sure. I don't know. Normally at the start of meetings, I normally just like to introduce myself as James Clark, sales guy, because I think that long introduction, nobody really cares.
You think you might just do that, but go ahead and maybe give people a bit more.
But probably a bit more context, yeah. So we probably started like 2.5 to 2 years ago with the goal of helping startups, and that's like that was the very high level goal. And then when you kind of get involved in startups, I think there's kind of 3 areas that they need help, and that's why we called it K3C. So the 3 C's are create, compete, and complete. So we're trying to help them create their kind of initial go-to-market strategy, so they can figure out how they get, minimal viable audience, to establish message market fit, to eventually establish product market fit, and that all kind of falls in that create phase. There's a compete phase where then it's like once we think we've got a strategy that we can execute, we execute it for them and with them. Basically because there's just loads of people that will do strategy, and unless someone executes that strategy that built that strategy, there's little value, I think, in these people that turn up and do strategy for you. If you don't execute it and prove the value of the strategy, I'm not sure it's worth spending the money on the strategy. So we create it, we compete it to prove it, and subject to the success of that, the next phase is often, once we've got some KPIs around, what level of effort did we take, how many calls did we have to make to get a meeting, how many meetings did we have to win a piece of business. Once we've got KPIs that we can build into a deck that we can put in front of someone who might invest in the startup, that would be a complete phase. So when they're looking for that next round of investment, seed, pre-Series A, Series A, we work with them to build the metrics around the investments that they need and the span of control about further investments in the team.
I think I was actually going to say that your understanding of that VC space and your focus on actually helping them get to that next funding is why the stage before that and the compete of actually like not just providing strategy, but actually like executing, like being that person that says like, we think this will work. We're going to prove and do what we can to make that work is so much more valuable than a lot of the consultants and advisors that you'll see in this space, because it is a busy space now. There's a lot of I guess us, K3Cs, sales readers, others like offering that advice, but it should actually help with some of the execution. You just like the pennies are counted so much more tightly, right? By investors, by founders and stuff. And you're adding like real value there, right? Is that why you kind of went down that route?
I mean, so I'm old. I've been in IT sales since 1990, which is a shocker for everybody. I'm sure everyone thought I was a young buck on this chat. But I think like just in throughout my career, there's a frustration about, everybody's got a part of the solution and you have to have so many people involved in that solution, and there's so little accountability from an end-to-end thing. I've worked with lots of marketing teams, and there's always a challenge between sales and marketing. So how do you bring sales and marketing into one function where the goal is net new recurring revenue? Like, it's not about top of funnel or mid funnel, it's not about meetings attended. That whole process is designed to create revenue at the end. And I think when we first started it, you were involved in some of these discussions, but when we first started, we talked about this vertically integrated go-to-market as a service, and we just couldn't get that into a good acronym. VT, GTM, AAS, like just didn't have the right thing. So like, if we break it down for clients now, we talk about SaaS, we talk about sales as a service, but we take it from the very early stages where they're often just trying to figure out. We're talking about startups here, but we do a lot of work in scale up. And for us, scale up is they've often been very successful in their home market, and now they want to expand into other regional markets. Mostly we're launching those organisations into the UK and Europe. But it's the same thing. Like, if they haven't got reference clients, if they haven't launched into Europe, the buying cycles, the buying motions are all very different. It's the same thing. You've got to start with what is basically a hypothesis about where this might fit, and then you've got to kind of work through proving it. And I think some of the learnings for us is around, we try not to focus on things where it might fit. We try and work with the tech partners and everybody in the team and the extended team to figure out where would it be weird if this didn't work. You've often got like one shot to kind of launch a thing and make it land. And, you've got to escape the valley of death. Everyone's funded to a certain point, but you've got to deliver revenue in a certain time frame. And that's true for the contracts that we sign with clients as well. So I think a lot of the time we start from that premise of, this could work anywhere. Where would it be weird if this didn't work?
Yeah. You always talk a lot, mate. But then, it's also you're giving those scale ups where they've been successful in their home regions and they want to get UK, EMEA markets. You've got someone in region then who you obviously lean on their expertise and their team, but you've got your own team which are willing to jump on calls, drive the sales, make things happen, because it's just so much more valuable than a strategist who is then going to help you connect with people, but you're still going to have to coordinate loads of different calendars, different time zones. You've got people who aren't maybe familiar to the same, how things work in the UK and all this type of stuff, right? And that's why you've got Jonathan in the team as well with his background, his network. You've got your own network, etc., and my network as well, I suppose. So, and that kind of brings us nicely into what we're going to maybe do today. We'll go through some of the tools and setup that you've starting to implement, how you're starting to work, what you see in the market. I think maybe different to the others that I've had on this call or this video before, and maybe most of the ones, you're working with normally like pre-seed, sort of maybe Series A, quite early stage startups, and yes, scale-ups who have a really good fit as well, maybe trying to get into this home region. But I think you'll be able to talk about a few things which maybe the others haven't, and there's maybe a lot more like testing involved. So it'd be interesting to see what those sort of strategies are. Obviously, I think what's the best place to start is where and which CRM is like your go-to at the moment, which is the one you're using, HubSpot, right?
Yeah, we use HubSpot.
Obviously, then with HubSpot, is there any particular reason like you're on HubSpot? Do you use a lot of its own features, or does that not really work with how you're operating for across different customers, across helping different startups?
So I'd say we're not using enough of the features. I'd like to be using more of the features. But I guess, like I said, I started in 1998, and it's like, I come from a CRM world. So, every activity that you do in a startup, you need to record it. You need to record the successes and the failures, and you just need some kind of central repository. I think when we were looking at this, I've spent a lot of time in enterprise sales where we're using Salesforce, which is a fantastic tool. It's just, it comes at a burden, and that burden isn't just financial, it's the complexity around the tool. Very capable platform. It's probably overkill for a lot of the companies and partners that we work with. And we tend to find that the clients that we work with are either using HubSpot themselves or maybe Pipedrive. And I think just as an acknowledgement of where we were when we started, our thing was we wanted a central hub. We wanted something that we knew we could connect all of our tools and resources to, so that it wasn't just the sales team providing manual updates into that. We wanted it to be able to get that from the tools and technologies that we built and deployed around it as a kind of central function and a central record.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things that we were actually talking about last week is actually just you can do this stuff with Salesforce. It's what Sam at Rocket Phone was talking about last week, and it's what me and my old company, we used to use Salesforce, and it works great for that. But HubSpot is just much quicker and easier to get lists, campaigns, things set up, and I guess ring fenced or segmented based on activity, based on lists, based on verticals or customers. It gives you a much more simpler, much more intuitive setup than maybe something like Salesforce.
One of the things that you repeatedly message on LinkedIn is about, it's not about, bloat on tech stack. Don't waste the money on the tech stack. Focus the money on coaching, develop, mentor. I think that's one of the things just throughout my entire sales career. Poor managers default back to, are you updating the CRM? Like the CRM isn't the sale. Like, the CRM is a record of what's happening, so everybody can share a kind of, common view, a common set of language, and get a kind of top down view of how the business is operating. But all the sales happens in the real world with real people. So I think my view for a lot of these startups, like you say, we're often working with people who are bootstrapped all the way up to Series A, is as far as we've gone at this point. Don't waste the money on the CRM.
Yeah. And best use of that money is upskilling, coaching, etc. Right?
Yeah, and like whether you can hire the best people you can afford to hire at the time, and then provide them with the best support you can get them at the phase that you are at. Like throughout my career, like the things I enjoy is coach, develop, mentor. I would talk about that at every level, and provided there are people in the organisation with different skills at different levels of maturity in the different processes, do reverse mentoring. I like when I was at Dell, they used to do a reverse mentor program there where they get the old guys like me who knew sales process and or Salesforce or whatever it was, and they'd pair us up with one of the kind of youngsters that had come into the grad program. They probably taught me more about social media than I taught them about and social selling and social listening than I taught them about formal sales process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a cool way of doing it as well, like reverse mentor. I like that. So then, once you've got this simple, nice, clean, easy to use, intuitive sort of CRM setup, where's the meat coming from? I guess like where are you building your lists? Where are you getting the data from?
LinkedIn. It's almost exclusively LinkedIn. I mean, just in terms of like that, and where we do all the social listening, and where we kind of build that minimal viable audience. Minimal viable audience is an audience of one, right? For a lot of these startups, it's like first client or first 5 clients. They're just not a better tool. Like, if you buy lists or data from anybody else, it is not as up to date as LinkedIn. Most of the list providers and data providers today are US centric, and the US data is often very good, but just their kind of European and UK data, it just trails, and partly that's a reflection of like privacy laws on the this side of the pond. Partly it's just a reflection probably of the size of the market and where they focus their time and energy.
Yeah, and actually, like I think you gave me this feedback only last week. Actually, like I think we're going to add another section here just for research. Like LinkedIn is hands down probably still the best for all of that, right? And I know, and this is probably where you can sort of educate. I know you're doing a lot of testing with Clay, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You and Jonathan are essentially, from what I pick up in our WhatsApp chats, essentially becoming part-time coders at this stage, learning a hell of a lot of stuff on the weekends to get all of this research together. But between LinkedIn and then using the AI from those two, you can get a really, really good list together. You can do a lot of the account research, right? But how time consuming has that been for you, learning that as a new skill?
Well, reverse mentor. Like, there's a bit of stuff I learn. Often I'll do the first 10%, and Jonathan's like, this is great. He's much more technically capable and focused than I am, and he will take the next 80% of the work out of it. But we've got kind of, what have we got? We've got a team of people that work together regularly. So not all of them are employees. But there's a guy that we work with, Kenny, who is he's a tools guru to some degree. So a lot of the stuff that he taught us around the capabilities in Clay to do AI capabilities within Clay, like when we first saw it, it's just absolutely bonkers. Like, the observation, what clients hate is when they get irrelevant messages. Like, this isn't targeted, specific. It doesn't apply to me. I don't work at that company. Our company isn't relevant for the outreach that your team are engaged, whatever it is. And even like second and third call, it's like, unless the second and third call is timely, relevant, up to date, new information, like the most customers' perspective is that salespeople don't do the research, aren't well informed, aren't educated, aren't calling about something which is relevant and timely. And Clay, more than any other tool that I've found in my entire sales career, allows you to do hyper relevant engagement on scale, basically. That's AI. AI has enabled research at a level that we just couldn't do, at a volume and a capacity that we couldn't do until very recently. And Clay just turns that into a no-code process.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of comes on to, like, I think one of the next points, or one of the, again, it's why you offer that execution point. You're not just strategists, you're doing the execution and support. Is that AI is good. Like, it's obviously useful. It's very useful. And you're using it to help with the research, identifying accounts, building your lists. But then you still need a human to execute, speak to the person, get on the calls, all of that stuff. And I think that's where, like, a lot of companies are perhaps getting themselves, like, they're tying themselves in knots where they think they can use AI. There's a tool called Clay. There's tools called, I don't know, Copy, AI SDRs, 11x, all these other things. And I think that's going to do everything for us. We just automate this whole thing. You can do a lot of it, but you still need humans willing to, like, sit down. And, like, I know you spend a few hours here and there on weekends understanding it. So you're putting in the right stuff at the start to get the right stuff out, and then have a human execute on what comes out the back end.
Just outside of the stuff that we're doing, like all the kind of latest developments in AI are kind of about this agent-based AI. And all of that really is about providing the human with their own personal AI agent to improve their capability. And I think that as a process, I'm on board with that. Like, using AI to enhance a human's capability to be more specific, to be more relevant, to be more timely, to be more informed, to be more professional, all of those things. I'm on board with all of that. Ultimately, I think sales is still an exchange of energy between two humans, especially anybody that's trying to do enterprise B2B sales. I don't think anybody's giving a £100,000 contract to an AI agent. I don't think they're engaging with an AI agent over an extended period of time to make an enterprise level decision about a piece of technology that they're going to potentially put their career on the line to choose and deploy. There's obviously a space for it. If you're selling B2C and it's high volume, low value, you just, like the banks have automated engagement because the economies, they need to make billions of pounds to keep their shareholders happy, and they don't want to hire real people, so they're using AI. I just don't know anyone that likes that. We all tolerate it because we need a bank, and it's difficult to find a bank that doesn't use, automation. I don't think anybody thinks that has improved their relationship with their bank.
Not at all.
And I think for startups, most startups are in the business of trying to improve their relationship with their clients and turn those clients into, raving fans of their technology that will talk about them positively to their friends and community.
And especially at the, those pre-seeds, those Series A, where you're operating, like, that trust, that feedback loop, a feedback loop from human to human, is so important. So you can tweak messaging, you can get that right, and you need to do that so then you can then scale in the future.
All the chat that you're reading, like all of these kind of startup blogs, is about do things that don't scale. Like, have the human engagement, build an understanding about what the actual pain is, what the biggest pain is, what the most current pain is, figure out how you can address that pain with your technology, or reverse it, figure out what the current largest, most significant pain for your client base is that you solve, and then figure out who has that pain and engage there. They're basically the only two ways I think you can do that. I don't think AI's there yet. Some human has to do that heavy lifting mentally. And then, sure, I think you can start to automate, orchestrate, and use a lot of the research capabilities that exist today to improve that relevance in terms of, hyper relevance for that individual in that role at that company in that country today.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you guys are using it with all this, with the AI, right? That research piece. But you've got humans, highly capable humans, willing to jump on those calls on behalf of your customers. So are there any other tools here that you're sort of using? And I guess, what's the main mode of outreach? Are you cold calling? Are you doing LinkedIn, email? What are the next biggest tools in your stack?
We do everything, right? So, it's like full scale to some degree because it depends how our customers want to be engaged. Like, some customers are on LinkedIn, like especially if they're in kind of sales and marketing. Some customers are on email. Some customers want a phone call. So it's going to vary depending on the startup that we're working with and the persona that they're trying to engage with. And like some of these startups, the best place to meet people is in real world networking events. I want to be clear that is. I think after the pandemic, a lot of us forgot about that. Observationally, I don't think having meetings in clients like we used to turn up and meet everybody in the decision making committee around the table. I don't think that happens much anymore. I don't think our clients are in the office, and when they are in the office, I don't think they're in the office to meet with suppliers. So I think most of it is happening virtually or at a networking event. Just on that, if you scroll back up a bit, so Apollo, in terms of like our kind of often our initial data set, we're probably going to use Apollo if we're looking at doing a campaign-based outreach. And then from that initial data set, we'd be putting the Apollo data through Clay, where we're going to run an AI agent against it to do all types of validation at the company level. The right company in the right region, likely to be a hit for this use case. And then we're probably going back to Apollo with the reduced list, and then we're probably building a contact list in Apollo as well. And then we're going to do the same thing to validate that contact list in Clay again.
Yeah. And then the next step, though, when you actually go to run some of the campaigns or cadences, whatever people want to call them these days, you're not doing that through Apollo. Apollo is your list build. Clay is your sort of verification, confirmation, enrich. Yeah. And then it goes into instantly HeyReach, or is it other tools at the moment?
So, I mean, in terms of like connection mediums, like email and InMail, just in terms of like mass scale outreach that you can to some degree automate, those two are still they're the only tools where you can build scale in for a small team to be able to build a kind of an automated process. So something where you can build in automation and track efficacy of that, see connection rates, response rates, open rates.
And is that when you said email and InMail? When you're saying InMail, you're talking LinkedIn, right? Just for and that's with something like HeyReach.
So today we're using Instantly, and we're using HeyReach.
Yeah.
I think in the last 7 days, I think I've been through I've been through the looking glass on Instantly, if you like, because we use it a lot. We send a lot of emails out on Instantly. We know we're getting good deliverability. We're doing all the things that you would want to do to protect your core domain. I won't expand on that, but there's loads of chat on LinkedIn about what those things are. So we're doing all those things. But even with that, like the amount of email that you send versus the responses that you get, you're into 0.00% returns on it. So in terms of using email for cold outreach and expecting to get leads from it, I think that is a poor expectation, genuinely, in terms of the level of time, effort, and the number of messages that you need to send. I just don't see it. However, the looking glass thing I've been through is, in terms of branding, marketing, someone needs to see the brand 7 times. Someone needs to know what you're doing. Someone needs to know that you are actively engaged in trying to sell to them over a period of time. Email is still one of the best tools. Don't abuse it though. Be respectful. Be consultative. Don't do the pitch slap. Don't turn up and be like, I haven't validated that you're interested in this thing or have a current need. I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing. Nobody likes that. I might as well go back to the bank thing. Like, nobody likes engaging with the automated teller. Don't be that. However, HeyReach for InMail programmatic engagement on LinkedIn with HeyReach, I think that is a solid tool. I think that is a solid strategy. And today we're using HeyReach, but I've spent a lot of time using other technologies. Like for some of these startups, I will tell them in phase 1, Duck Soup can be a great tool. Very low cost per user, gets you going, and allows you to test the message. Maybe that's where, if you're bootstrapping or you're very early stage and you just want to start to figure out that minimal viable audience, I'm looking for 1 to 5 clients, you can get a lot done with Duck Soup.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've seen you recommend that and use that. It's two points I want to pick up on there is first how you were talking about email. It sounds like it's a closer or it's a move slightly back towards marketing and sales. And marketing can take care of email, do email automations, all of that stuff, and use it as a signal to help support the sales team on who to reach out to help with their other outreach and their own personal outreach, which is where then LinkedIn is a more personal outreach. The calls that some of the team will make to follow up, again, more personal outreach. Whereas I think a lot of where the world has gone wrong, giving every SDR under the sun or thinking every SDR needs to be sending the emails, and you just end up with these spam bots. I think Abbas, a playbook agency, called it just creating email monkeys. And that's what you're being really careful to avoid, because me and you have never liked email.
I think it's a poor use of time, energy. I think it's easier to alienate your audience, is the reality. But in an ideal world, early stage startups are niching hard. And in that, you've probably got a relatively small audience. And if that's true, then what you're trying to do is build relevance, credibility, and a relationship so that they feel like you are somebody that they want to do business with, and they are prepared to give you tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds on an annual recurring basis.
Yeah.
Why would we risk spending them with automated email outreach?
Yeah. So as we're thinking of we tend to think of this as for the sales team or the SDR team. I want to take instantly off there, although you are using that to support the startups, and it's from a bit more of a marketing perspective. You're not giving it to the salesperson to just go nuts on. Nice. Talk to me about some of the calling stuff then. I know
we've been chatting about that this week. So I think if we're going to deploy a tool, we haven't deployed a tool yet because we haven't been doing cold calling in a way that you'd want that kind of systemized approach. But I mean, that was a conversation we had last week. I was like, I think we need to deploy a calling platform, like some automated dialer, or start to do list-based views in HubSpot and work through a campaign where we're doing a systematic approach, and we want to automate that for some of the guys that are doing outbound. So you and I had a chat. It turns out we're going to use Just Call on your recommendation.
Nice tee up for me there. But yeah, Just Call, again, similar to what you said about the reason Duck Soup is a good option. It's low cost, it's reliable. Just Call is low cost. Jump in, set it up yourself. You can add a few different numbers from different regions on there if you want, and you can be off to the races very quickly. And it's very reliable. I've used it now for maybe 3 or 4 years, and it's one of those tools where people might say, "Oh, it's not great. It's just a self sign up. There's no team to support you. There's no team to talk to. It's really hard to get hold of a human being if I need help." It's I've never needed help. I've never had any downtime. I've never had it cut out on a call, and I call almost every day. So I think it's just such a reliable one for small teams, startups that just need to get going and test. So that's what I recommend that to you.
I'll report back. We're going to find out.
Nice. And so then that's kind of everything in the stack, right? That's what we're using with some of these startups and that sort of that pre-seed, that stage of testing product market fits, maybe some of the Series A. But that's helping you test messaging into reliable lists. Test messaging into reliable lists. You do use Clay in a really intelligent way to verify a lot of the lists, the data, before you let anyone go nuts on it, and then you're doing it that outreach.
If you look at that sales stack there, we could go back 10 years ago, and that sales stack would look like that. The product names might be different, but I mean, for 10 years, we've had a CRM, we've been using LinkedIn for research, Sales Nav, or just native LinkedIn. You've had some kind of data provider, there were big American ones initially, and I think that market's, we've used Lusher, for instance, but Apollo seems to be the favourite at the moment. We were doing outreach on LinkedIn. That's been going on for 10 years. And there's been dialers and, phone systems. All that's existed. Obviously, it's not on the list there, but the thing that's changed for me is that, like I said, Clay is the thing that brings in that capacity to do huge research on predefined lists augmented with AI that can provide, the hyper personalized, hyper relevance to improve the quality of the list. And my only goal in improving the quality of the list is every action a small team takes needs to be valuable. It's like, I don't, let's say you're doing outreach on LinkedIn and you've got to send a connection request. You can only send a certain number a day. If 10 of them go to people who connect with me that aren't relevant, that's like, I think it's probably about 25% of your opportunity wasted that day, assuming that LinkedIn was your outreach model. So get into that hyper relevant and having a hyper personalized relevance to make sure that every action you take delivers value. That's the bit. And there's all this like chat about, I think it was Abe Lincoln, always like, if you've got 3 hours to chop down a tree, spend 2.5 hours sharpening the axe. Research is the thing. Research. That's the thing that AI enables that just hasn't existed in that tech stack for the last 10 years. So if that isn't the change, I don't know what is from a tech stack. Spend the money on coach, develop, mentor.
Absolutely right. One of the key things there that you're talking about is, and again, for the staged businesses we're working with, we're talking about like every action you want it to be valuable. So you're using AI to make sure that's the case. And often the stage of startups, and this is why, again, you offer the execution piece, is you don't know what your KPIs are. Like there's no point just walking in and being like, right, you need to make $150 a day, send 40 emails, do this, do that. Like actually we want to make sure there's valuable actions happening, and then off the back of that we can start to create some reliable KPIs and metrics to take forward. Otherwise KPIs are like a thing I always say, you'll have heard me say this before, is like KPIs aren't targets. Like I don't care if your KPI is $100 a day, for example. If you make a hat trick in your first 10 dials, cool, you smashed it. I don't care if you go and make another 90 dials. Like, make sure that follow-up's good. Make sure your research is good so you can do another hat trick tomorrow, whatever it might be. It's about the value of the actions. KPIs are not targets, which I think we often come in and see the companies we talk to and work with is they've confused that. And KPIs the SDRs are looking at KPIs as targets. KPIs are just an indication of effort.
KPI is a fallback position when you miss your target. I mean, that's like, every QBR I've ever been in, and like, I've had QBRs where they've been great and we've been smashing it out of the park, and like, you've closed all the mega deals that you've been working on for however long. And in those scenarios, you're just talking about the revenue, you're talking about the customer, you're saying there might be opportunities for upsell, really, but it's very revenue focused. Where did the revenue come from? What was the pain the customer had? Revenue, that's really the goal. The goal is net new recurring revenue, and for some teams it's account retention, right? We can't grow unless we can keep the customers that we've got. Like there's no point trying to put more stuff in if we can't stabilize the base. KPIs are what we talk about when we aren't delivering the revenue, because we're trying to use KPIs as a metric and a measure for the actions that we're taking to work out which actions are valuable and we want to focus on, which actions aren't working and we want to deprecate to some form.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Nice way to finish that off. KPIs are one thing, but valuable actions are what matters and it's what are going to move the needle for the teams you're working with. And yeah, great to see that. In your own words, some sales guy who calls himself old is adapting and looking at all the AI and using it in the right way and to actually help companies. And you're not just using it to spam more and cut corners. So yeah, great speaking with you, James. And yeah, look forward to seeing K3C succeed.
No worries. I'll chat to you later.
See you later, mate.
See you.